Hi everyone. For tonight's homework, we're going to be finding the percent of a number. There are two formulas that we need to know to find the percent of the number, and the first formula is the percent proportion. The percent proportion says the percent over 100 is equal to the part over the whole. As we discussed in class, a percent is really just a special fraction that is out of 100. So we can use a proportion, which is two equivalent ratios, to find whatever is missing, whether it's the percent, part, or the whole. When we're solving these problems, we have a couple of clue words, is and of. Is going to help us recognize what the part is, and of is going to help us figure out what the whole is. Next, we have the percent equation. So when we're finding a percent of a number, we're finding the percent of the whole, and that is equal to the part. So we're going to have the percent times the whole equal to the part. The only thing that you have to be careful about when using this equation is that you convert the percent to a fraction or a decimal first. Now let's scroll down to example 1. Example 1 says the storage space on Jack's tablet is 25% full. If there are 128 gigabytes of storage on his tablet, how much storage is Jack currently using? So we're first going to estimate how much of the storage that Jack is using. So we know that a percent goes from 0 to 100. All right, we also know that 50% is half, which is right in between. So we're going to use this as a benchmarker to kind of help us estimate what our answer is going to be between. So if I know that there's a total of 128 gigabytes of storage, I could say that 128 is the same as 100%. So if he was using all of his storage, all 128 gigabytes, that would be the same as saying he's using 100% of his storage. If he was using 0% of his storage, that would mean that he's using 0 gigabytes. So if he's using 50% of his storage, that would mean that he's using half of 128, which is 64 gigabytes. We just do 128 divided by 2. So if we want to estimate our answer, we know that 25% is in between 0 and 50%. So I know that my answer, the amount of storage that Jack is using, is going to be between 0 and 64 gigabytes. It actually turns out that it's right in between, right in the middle, because 25% is exactly between 0 and 50. But all we're going to say right now, just to help us get a reasonable answer, is that he's using less than 64 gigabytes of storage. So our final answer has to be less than 64 gigabytes. Okay, so the first way that we're going to solve this problem is using the percent proportion. Okay, going back to the problem, we know that he's 25% full, and we have a total of 128 gigabytes. So this represents my percent, and this is my whole. We want to know what part of his storage he is using. So the percent proportion says percent over 100 equals part over whole. So now let's fill in what we know. Well, we know that the percent is 25, so this would be 25 over 100. Next, we know that the whole is 128. We're looking for what part of the storage he's using, so we're going to use the variable x. Now there's a lot of different ways that we could solve this. We could simplify 25 over 100 to 1/4 if we wanted to, but for now I'm going to work on using cross multiplication since we just reviewed that. So I'm going to cross multiply. 100 times x is equal to 25 times 8. So feel free to use your calculator for this. Okay, so my next line would say 100x equals, and then 25 times 128, which is 3,200. And now x is equal to 3,200 divided by 100. So x is equal to 32. So that means that Jack is using 32 gigabytes of his storage. So let's take a look at our estimate. Our estimate said less than 64 gigabytes. So 32 is less than 64 gigabytes, and really if we're looking at this, 32 is exactly between 0 and 64, so that definitely makes sense as our answer. So he's using 32 out of his 128 gigabytes of storage. Okay? The next way that we could solve this problem is using the percent equation. So I'm going to show this in two different ways. So the percent equation says the percent of the whole equals the part. So we're finding 25% of 128, which is the part, or x. So remember that this word of means we have to multiply. Now the only important part here is that you need to convert 25% to a fraction or a decimal first. We're going to do it both ways. So remember, 25% doesn't just mean 25, so we can't do 25 times 128. We have to make it a fraction or a decimal. So I'm going to do it both ways. So first I'm going to do a fraction. So 25% I know is the same as 1/4. So we're finding 1/4 of 128 to get our answer. Well, 1/4 of means 1/4 times 128 equals x. So my final answer would be 32, which is the same answer we got before. Okay, and the other way that we could do this is convert 25% to a decimal. So remember, to convert 25% to a decimal, use dupes. Slide your decimal over 2 places. So that would be 25 hundredths of 128 equals x. Or we could say 0.25 times 128 equals x. And if you type that into your calculator, 0.25 times 128 equals 32. So we get the same answer, 32 gigabytes. So all of these solutions are different ways that you can solve the problem. They're all correct. In class, you're going to have the choice of which one you want to do, but for the next problem, the U-try problem, I want you to show using both the proportion and the percent equation.